Motor 101. Luke and Steiny get shit done. It's by far the greatest podcast known to man and kicks the most ass.
Jim Glancy, Barry Presents on Promoter 101.
Happy holidays, dear industry family. It's our holiday show with me, Luke, Connor, and I bet we've already spiked the eggnog. Huh, guys?
We certainly have. We've got that holiday festive feeling, and we've got the marketing genius from Concerts West, the one, the only Amy Morrison here to sprinkle some holiday dash on top of that, Dan. She's going to be here talking about the massive promotion that she just rolled out for the Rolling Stones U.S. Stadium Tour, a massive feat.
Plus, ICM's Rick Farrell opens up on a very special one-on-one. It's pretty personal. It's like an after-school special with a mustache.
With a mustache, which was actually what Rick Farrell looked like when he was in 8th grade. I think he's had that mustache for the last, 25 years, Dan.
Actually, Ricky looked like the all-American surfer dude. He was like bleach blonde hair, 6'5" or something, all-American like baby face. Ricky was California boy for sure.
Today, you know him as the Stash. Later on this podcast, he's going to sit down and tell you how he got from surfer boy to Ricky for Reals, the best mustache in the music business. And then after that, we're going to be joined by SMG Tulsa's Joe Giordano Jr. sitting down and turning the tables on you, Steiny.
So, his boss just left the BOK Center, and you got to wonder if Joe is going to get upped into that position.
Is this breaking news, Dan? Are you breaking some news in Promoter 101 right now?
I'm asking a question because I don't think anybody's been named for that new position yet. Also, Jeff Nickler didn't announce where he was going in LA, just that he was going to LA, but that has been a public announcement. So you got to wonder, what's going on with Jeff Nickler? Something's up there. Things are happening here at the end of the year.
Things are happening, Dan. A lot of stuff happening right now.
Of course, I'm not breaking the news because it was already broken. And of course, we all know I don't do the news anymore. But Luke Pierce does. And coming up with news of the week, Luke Pierce will be talking about all exciting stuff in just a few moments.
Fergie, Tour Design. I'm on Promoter 101.
We'll be bringing our show to Philly, PA on Wednesday, January 30th, 2019. That's right, Philadelphia, PA. Get ready for us.
That's right. You can catch us on the campus of the University of the Arts at Kaplan Recital Hall. Dan and I are going to be sitting down with Live Nation's Jeff Gordon. Looking forward to that. What are we expecting here, Dan?
7 o'clock show, 6:30 starting time. It's going to be a bacchanal afterwards. I think the booze is going to be flying, Luke. What do you think?
I think so too, Dan. I'm actually already actively preparing my liver with a bunch of detox so that I can survive the evening with you and Jeff Gordon somewhere.
Is that a pre-tox then?
Yeah, they call it a pre-tox. You drink a lot of liquor so that it clears out the old liquor that's in your liver, and then you're ready for the new liquor.
And then it's a retox.
That's how it works. Yeah.
All right.
Science. Dan, did you forget where you can listen to Promoter 101? No worries. We're going to remind you right now.
That's right. It's easy to find us. We're on Spotify. We're on iTunes. We're on iHeart. They're still in business, and well, they are. We're fucking on there. Spreaker, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Music. We're going crazy.
And if you do the social media thing, you're more than welcome to follow us on Twitter. Keep up with us on Twitter, Instagram. I'm W. Luke Pierce. Dan's the Jew. The show's Promoters 101. That's promoters plural for all you good people out there. We also have Promoter 101, which we've been using both thanks to Jason Bernstein and his legal prowess at AEG Presents, hooking us up with that handle. We've got to start merging those things together, Dan.
Yeah, that requires thought and time and effort.
Thought and time? What the fuck? We're not doing that. Scrap that. Next.
It's like he knew the joke that was coming next. Yeah. He could feel it. Do you have shit on your mind? Well, we all do. But you can share it with us right now. Don't hold that shit in. It's just not healthy. Hit us up via email at steiny@promoter101.net. That email address is up and running nonstop to serve all of your email request needs.
Rick Greenstein. I'm with the Gersh Agency, going to be on Promoter 101.
If you've missed any of our past Promoter 101 episodes, don't worry. You can catch up. Just go to the World Wide Web, promoter101.net, into that magic browser space, and search for us. And then go over to episode 69, because that's the cool episode this week.
That is the cool episode, Dan. It's got Light's Ant Taylor sitting down to explain how he's using technology to protect fans from those nasty scalpers in the secondary market.
So that would have been a really different interview because Luke was supposed to interview him in New Orleans, but we wound up drinking so late the night before. Luke slept straight through the fucking interview.
I didn't pre-tox that night, Dan.
You did retox, though.
I didn't pre-tox for that New Orleans trip, so I was very out of it that morning and was thus unable to make to the interview.
So it would have been a much different interview because Luke is a very technology savvy guy, but I thought it was a great conversation actually in hindsight, and I learned a lot.
I think you did very well, and I think Ant Taylor is one of the most brilliant minds working in music tech right now, which is just littered with people that think they know what they're doing. Ant really is the real deal. He knows what he's doing. His technology, since we recorded him on this podcast, has been licensed in about 1 million other places since then, and he's doing a great job and a great service of taking money from scalpers' pockets, which is ultimately servicing the fans and the customers. So worth re-listening to, and if you don't know the tech, you should check it out. Light, L-Y-T-E, Ant Taylor, he's the fucking man.
It's like Robin Hood, really, for the ticketing world. It's like he takes back from the scalpers and gives back to the artists and the promoters.
Brilliant guy. What else do we have? Episode 69 wasn't just about Ant and how I didn't make that interview. There were other things going on that day.
Well, another interview that you were at was AEG Presents Johnny Valentino. JV gives us a glimpse of the whole world and how it works down in beautiful Florida. It's a great interview. Either one of these guys could have been a feature, and it was a doubleheader episode for sure.
JV breaking down how Florida is like its own country full of Floridian people. And then later on in that podcast, we had a war story from the man himself in Birmingham, Mr. Todd Coder. Andrea Johnson, AJ, sat in from ICM Partners to do the news, Dan. That was a podcast that I was noticeably absent for, episode 69.
And you were sadly missed. Hey, if you're sitting down the can or just listening to the podcast doing your business, how about dropping us a review? Or subscribe while you're at it. It's the Promoter 101 podcast. Then wash your hands and call your mother.
Call your mother.
Hi, this is Jamie Kelsel, an agent at APA in Los Angeles, and I am on Promoter 101.
News of the week.
Time for News of the Week featuring our old friend, Luke Pierce.
It's time for some news of the week. Facebook making news this week again, and not in a particularly great way. On Wednesday morning, the New York Times published a relatively scathing piece about Facebook and how it gave companies like Spotify and Netflix more extensive access to user personal data than it had previously disclosed. Facebook allowed features like messaging integrations out to these companies, but nearly all have been shut down over the past few months, save for 2 noted deals with Apple and Amazon. Facebook went on further to clarify that none of the deals gave outside access to data without user consent. From a blog post they read, people had to explicitly sign into Facebook first to use a partner's messaging feature. Take Spotify, for example. After signing into your Facebook account into Spotify's desktop app, you then send messages without ever leaving the app, provided partnerships with access to the person's messages in order to power this type of feature. And as if most weren't already taking shots to the groin in a brutal day on the market as the Fed raised interest rates 50 basis points, Facebook stock stumbled below a one-year low to 133 or down 7%. The 2019 scorecard is in, or so it was published, as Hits Daily Double published the nearly end standings for record label market share, which has become the standard staple to measure the side of recorded music business. Universal Music Group, led by Sir Lucian Grainge, submitted its place as the leader with number 1 market share of 38.6% in total activity, which is a half point higher than its place in 2017. Sony Music Group followed with a 25.4 share, and Warner Music Group rounded out the label groups with 17.1. At the label level, Republic Records made a push to overtake Craig Kallman and Julie Greenwald's Atlantic Records position, coming in second behind Atlantic with a 9.5 total share. IGA, that's Interscope, Geffen, and Verve, Capitol Music Group, which is in Caroline, Capitol Music, Capitol Christian, Motown, Virgin, and Blue Note, and Columbia, which is Columbia Records and Red, rounded out the top 5 respectively. We shared a link out to that great article from Hits Daily Double in one of our social posts. And finally, a moment of remembrance as we celebrate the life of actress, director, voice actress, showrunner, and generally great person, Penny Marshall. Penny Marshall died at the age of 75 on Monday night at her home in Los Angeles due to complications with diabetes. Marshall was a groundbreaking figure in Hollywood through a decades-long career in front of and behind the camera. Laverne and Shirley star and director of hits like League of Their Own, which is the first movie, by the way, to gross more than $100 million at the box office as directed by a woman. She also directed The Preacher's Wife and Big. Was remembered fondly by many in Hollywood this week, and we share our own condolences and sorrows here on Promoter 101. Next week, we'll be joined to recap some of the best stories of the year with Amplify Magazine and Billboard's Dave Brooks. Stay tuned, and that'll do it for News of the Week.
This is Andy Levitt with Live Nation Comedy. You're listening to Promoter 101.
Dan, did you think that we were going to forget the Promoter 101 Badass of the Week? We're a third of the way through this podcast. I think people are waiting right now.
We're like 2 minutes into this podcast, but that's okay.
We're not 2 minutes. We're 2 minutes into recording this podcast, Dan. There were things that we said.
Oh, man. The thing is, people are on the edge of the seats wondering if they won Badass of the Week this week. So let's just break it down. This week's Badass of the Week is a veteran concert promoter from Live Nation Toronto, Canada, Emmanuel Patterson, as Promoter 101's Badass of the Week.
Hats off to you, Emmanuel.
My name is Mark Ryder, and I work at Metallica HQ in the Bay Area of California, and I'm on Promoter 101.
In our feature interview this week, we have one of the really great marketing geniuses in the game from Concerts West. We're joined by Amy Morrison, who sat down with Dan during the very recent Aspen Live Music Conference. She came off the heels of a massive rollout of the Rolling Stones U.S. Stadium Tour, a phenomenal success. And Dan dove into how she created that moment.
I'm hanging out with probably my first friend in the industry, Amy Morrison. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dan.
We could start with the early days and move into the Rolling Stones, or we could start with dessert. What should we do?
Early days.
Let's go early. You're originally from the East Coast, right?
Yes, Baltimore.
How did you wind up in Colorado?
I went to college in Boulder. From there, had some friends who were in this band called Little Women, and I used to do the door for them. And I met this guy named Bill Bass. And that was the beginning.
Now, you worked for Bill before he worked for Barry Fay, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, Bill Bass, is it Image One? What was the name of Bill's company?
Image Productions.
Okay, and Bill had Norman's.
Yeah.
Which was, I guess that would be Aurora technically, but it was the club in Denver when the Rainbow Music Hall was the A club.
And the Rainbow was shut at that point, I think.
Was the Rainbow already closed?
Yeah, we reopened it at some point down the way. Maybe when he went to Fay.
You guys were in Aurora-ish, like right there where it turned into Denver, right by the Cherokee Reservoir kind of vibe. And all the cool bands played Norman's. It was basically the CBGBs of Denver, right?
Oh, yeah. We just did punk, metal. I remember, Metallica in the early days. A lot of that speed metal. Bill was really into that. That was his favorite, Look at Bill. Well, you can't see him, but... And reggae. It was reggae and metal.
That's like his thing. Like, He really loves reggae. And he's like, widespread still his thing. He's like into the jam stuff. I don't think Bill ever got his due as how diverse a talent buyer he actually was.
Yeah, and there was this other club in Boulder, too. What was it?
Boulder Coast?
Yes, Boulder Coast.
Points.
And we did a lot of shows there. Everything, like you said, it was really diverse. And it was great because I did everything. I did the door. I made the deli trays. I put up the posters. And I had a little help with the posters.
My first gig.
So it was an incredible place to learn.
You were doing everything. Why did you choose marketing?
I had been doing a lot of volunteer work, actually, at this place called the Rocky Mountain Peace Center. There was a lot of similarities in what I was doing there, which I really just gravitated to. It was a lot of protesting. We did a lot of encircling Rocky Flats, and we went and stopped a nuclear test, and a lot of knocking on doors. But it was really about getting the word out, teaching people about what was going on.
So your two loves kind of found themselves.
Yeah.
But you did time on the road too, right?
That's right. So I did have that production background, and I went on the road with MC Hammer, the You Can't Touch This tour.
So was it like 89, something like that?
That sounds right.
Was this before it really blew up?
Yeah.
It was the same album cycle, but it was the first single, not that fourth single. Because Vanilla Ice and them did the arenas.
We did arenas too.
Al Heyman tour too,
yeah,
right? Like,
totally Al Heyman tour.
McNichols Sports Arena.
Oh my God. And we played so many cities. I remember it was a crazy summer. Mo Morrison was the production manager.
You guys got along really well for a while, right?
Yeah, we got married. Father of my amazing son, our amazing son.
Who followed you to Boulder.
Yeah, he sure did. So yeah, that was a crazy tour. We couldn't get buses. It was like that big summer when New Kids on the Block, there were tons of stadium tours out, and they came to Mo very late to get the tour going. And he's like, hey, you want to go on the road? I'm like, sure. We were working some defunct award show called the Rock Awards. But we started in one of those, like a Greyhound bus. Like we couldn't even get a bus.
Were you and Mo dating before the road?
No.
The roadmance.
Yes.
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that we lost Mo a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we sure did. Miss him.
Industry icon. It was a big loss.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you decide that production's not going to be your world.
Exactly.
And you settled down back in New York?
Yeah, so I was in New York and bounced around a little bit. I did some label work, production. I was a runner. I worked for John Scher for a little bit.
That must have been unique. Bill Bass to John Scher.
Well, no, Bill Bass to Barry Fay to John Scher.
We skipped Barry Fay.
We totally skipped Barry Fay.
Can we go back? It seems like a chapter that's important here.
Yeah, well, for a little while, Bill went over to Fay.
Well, he wasn't acquired, right? He's just hired.
Yeah, he just went there. He was hired. And I didn't get hired. So Bill gave me a lot of his, I promoted on my own for a while. A lot of stuff Bill couldn't do at Fay, I would do. Sonic Youth, I remember, DOA, Circle Jerks, all kind of fun stuff.
Did you like talent buying?
No.
It wasn't your thing? It wasn't your calling?
Yeah, and then eventually they hired me on at Fay as an intern. For this marketing guy, Tom Oxner, hired me on as an intern. And we used to do all these festivals up in, what's the ski resort?
Oh, is it Breckenridge, the American Music Fest, stuff like that?
Yeah, Winter Park. So I did the marketing for that stuff, and I remember we did that Monster, and then I got brought on, and we did Monsters of Rock. I remember was the first big show.
So what, Van Halen and Metallica, Scorpions?
Yeah, and it did great in Denver. Like, we kicked butt. I do remember that. So then I started working at Fay in the marketing department.
And how long did you work for Barry?
Through late 80s, because I moved to New York in the early 90s.
And Barry was the game. There really was no one else promoting any volume of real shows in Colorado.
Oh, no.
Barry did the Red Rock season, which was probably at that point closer to 25 or 30 shows. The summer seasons weren't nearly what they are now.
No, Budweiser Summer Stars.
Where you'd line up for the paper to come out and see that big cross-section, and Barry would go on every radio station, every TV station to go announce all the big shows.
Yeah, and, I had a great time. I still got to do a little bit of everything at Fay. I remember I would also pick up extra time to being a runner. I got to pick up so many cool people at the airport, like Johnny Rotten and Randy Newman.
Was that the same trip? Because that'd be an interesting conversation.
Roy Orbison was playing at the Paramount, and I got to pick him up. And I must admit, I didn't know who he was. And I stayed for the show, and I was just blown away. Of course, So, yeah, the Paramount, we used to promote there, too. That's in the Fay time.
Okay, so you decided that you'd had enough and it was time to go to New York?
Yeah, I was ready. Figured if I was going to do it, go to the big city.
And that's something you wanted? You wanted to live in New York?
I wanted to live in New York, wanted to go back east. Didn't have a job, but I had a place to live with one of my best friends from college. We had an apartment in Soho. Back in the day, it was great, before Soho got all fancy. And took whatever work I could get. I would temp at record labels. I worked production for John Scher shows. Metropolitan folks hired me like on a freelance gig I remember it was to market Nintendo. It was playing at the Javits Center. Funny now, I know a lot about Nintendo. I had no clue back then.
You did a good job marketing it.
Yeah.
So you worked for John Scher.
Worked for John for a little bit, and then I got a job at this ad agency, and Ron was the client.
Ron Delsner?
Yeah, Ron Delsner was the client. That started my relationship with Ron Delsner. He let that agency go, and we ended up at Gray Entertainment, which was an incredible experience. And I got to really set up how the whole marketing department for his account would work there. And we had Jones Beach, we had Garden State Arts Center, we had so many stadium shows. I mean, McCartney, Billy and Elton. And I was there a good 9-10 years, maybe 8 or 9. Seems like 10. And yeah, Mitch was there. That's really where I got my first introduction to touring. It was with Mitch and Neil Diamond.
Mitch Slater?
It was me, Mitch, and Donna.
Donna Benedetto?
Yep, Donna D.
They're doing full tours, and they're partnering with the local guys in most cases, right?
Not with Neil. We did it all ourselves. No agent, no local promoter. I promoted it locally in the market, direct with the media, or some combination of with the venues. It sort of depended, sort of what the setup was with the venue.
Well, that's kind of almost unheard of those days. I mean, besides maybe Heyman.
Yeah, I think, that's how the original Concerts West guys used to do it.
Yeah, it was kind of off the beaten path. They were definitely cutting their own teeth.
Yeah, so that's where Sal Bonafetti, another, amazing man, mentor of mine, another one who we lost, probably close to 10 years ago now.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. I learned so much from him. He was incredible. So that was it. We just did Neil Diamond for years and years and years.
So promoting from New York in other cities before there was internet, you really have to dig in because you can't just Google what the local weekly is.
No.
There was some research involved with every city, especially the first time you're going in.
Oh, yeah.
Marketing Kansas City. Obviously Denver was probably easy for you. You live there. But figuring out what the right radio station was going to be. And I'm sure your venue partners were helpful there. But digging in, that had to be a lot more work than it would be today.
Oh, a ton more work. Now we have locals in most markets, and the venues are so much more sophisticated these days.
And you've got Google.
For sure.
Like, how much easier would have that made everything if you could Google shit back then?
I know. It's like you almost want the phone books of every city or something. So, yeah, really got to know the stations in all the markets and worked with media everywhere. So created some great relationships.
And then you wind up with Concerts West. Is that the next jump?
No, I left New York. Sal told me that I could keep Neil. So I moved across the country. Mo and I moved across the country, moved to LA, and I had my own company again. and Neil was my client, and it was great. I used to go sit in Sal's office every day. He had an office in the Ticketmaster building. When it was on Western, it's still there, I guess, their operations on Western and Wilshire across from the Wiltern. It was just great. I just soaked it all up. It was one of those, just sit in his office and listen to him make the deals and have all his conversations. So I did Neil with him for quite a while, still out of LA. And then I started taking on other tours. I did Further Festival for John, Blink 182, Burn the Floor. So different people would hire, I was for hire to do the tour marketing. And then in those cases, it was really a lot of strategy and then working with they were already sold off to local promoters, either sold off to local, it wasn't necessarily sold off to tour promoters.
Because Further was playing the amphitheaters in a lot of cases, right?
Yeah.
John was producing the tour for the band?
Yeah. But, it was sold off market by market. It wasn't really a tour promoter. So I sort of served that role as the strategy and the, protecting the brand. And
right, because management and agencies didn't really have that yet.
No. So I did that for years out of Colorado. And then first tour I did with Paul Gongaware was Yanni. He was huge. He did like the Acropolis, and he had.
And I guess if you're promoting Neil Diamond, promoting Yanni is not a far step.
No, it was huge PBS tie, and that's the first time I ever did a real full-on PBS. And he was just a superstar.
And that was an arena tour, right?
Oh yeah, huge. So I worked with Paul on that, and that was pre-Concerts West. They hadn't started that. He had a company called Cascade Concerts.
Was Meglin already with him?
Not yet. Not at that point. I mean, they'd been together back in the day, but this was just flat out Paul.
Meglin was at Pace at that point?
Yes. And then they got together, formed Concerts West, and they started being the bulk of my business. And I was like, I'm a little tired of just working out of the house. I want to go be around people. And I was like, time to go full-time with them.
I'm sure they jumped at that.
Oh, yeah. No, it was great. It was perfect.
But you were one of the early employees for Concerts West and AEG in general, right?
Oh, yeah. It was pre-Golden Voice. We were the first. Concerts West was the first one.
And that's grown into so many things, right?
Oh, my God. Leaps and bounds. It's huge. Yeah.
I mean, you've been there longer than Jay Marciano has.
That is true. 17 years.
When it comes to the biggest stuff that company has, you get to play with the biggest, coolest toys in that toy box.
I do. I'm very blessed. Very lucky.
Cool. Now, can we talk about the coolest band in the world?
Okay. Dan's favorite band.
You get to work with the fucking Stones. That's amazing.
The first tour, which was that during the 50th anniversary, and Paul did it. Paul got the tour. We were just ecstatic. You all hear like, oh, the band's very involved. They manage themselves, whatever. I mean, we actually got on a phone call with Mick and talked about the marketing of the tour. I couldn't believe it. I just was like, oh my God.
So Mick Jagger knows your name.
As one would expect, he was super smart and asked really good questions. And it was just the whole thing. And that's the tone that has been set for all these years.
That's just amazing. So you guys have gone around the country in a couple cycles now. Gone around the world, excuse me.
Yeah, world.
Last year you guys did the UK and most of Europe and just announced the States. The rollout for that was so out of the box. Obviously you guys did the normal social medias and there was cool stuff, but the way you guys tied in Ellen and Fallon and the NFL, and it was so well done. It was everywhere. It was done tastefully, and it was all cool. You get that in place and build that out. Must take a whole lot of strategy.
Yeah, we were fortunate to have time from when we confirmed the tour and knowing when we were going to go on sale. We were really, really excited about the idea about announcing it before Thanksgiving so that people had that window of time to talk about it and, let it sink in.
Because there's a good lead time, like 10 days, right?
Yeah, even longer. I mean, we announced it Monday before Thanksgiving, and then we went on sale 2 weeks later.
Friday, right?
Yeah, the following Friday. And so we started it with the tease. I mean, the Rolling Stones, obviously huge brand. The world knows who they are, but not very active in the States at this particular time. I mean, they're not.
It's been like 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Like
they weren't doing a lot of press. They didn't have a top single. So we have to work with them and figure out how to elevate them to be into the mainstream and to have people talking about them. So we started, you can't go wrong. The most iconic logo in the world. We just started with a really simple tease. We started putting the tongue out places. And the first one that really, we really worked it with the NFL and Denver. Actually, the Broncos.
So was that intentional or was that a gaffe on the...
Oh, it was intentional. We did it on purpose.
Because it was up and then it was down, right?
Yeah.
So it was supposed to look like it was a gaffe.
Yeah, and it was just, we didn't want it to get stale.
For those of you that don't know, outside the stadium, they put the tongue up at Mile High at Invesco. And it got out on social media that it was like, Stones must be coming, right?
Yeah.
And then it was gone. It was like, oh, maybe they weren't supposed to announce it. So it was just, did they gaffe? Did they not?
Oh, no, it was amazing. And the rumors were flying. Are they playing Red Rocks? They're going to, all this stuff.
No,
it was just great. It was
pretty obvious they were playing Vesco.
But it was funny. And then that same weekend, the Patriots also did a tease for us. The cheerleaders, and typically they use a lot of Stones music in NFL games, so it's not really, that odd. But they did a number to start me up, and at the end of it, they all opened up their jackets, and they all had T-shirts with the tongue logo on them. And the tongue and the Patriot animation logo was going on the big screen. And that was also pre-announcement. So those two things really kicked it off. Other teams were doing different stuff, but those were the two big ones that got people talking. And that was the strategy. And then the next weekend, we rolled it out in a couple more games. So we had a good 2 weeks almost, 10 days to 2 weeks of just doing the tongue. Once we kicked it off in the stadiums, we had snipes in local markets. We did chalk some places. We did, whatever worked for the marketplace.
I like the song that Mick did on his guitar where he just kind of announced the songs as he sang them out.
I know. He was so stoked. It was awesome that he did that. It was great. So he did that. Well, that was after we announced. So then we did our regular social media stuff. We had some great creative, which we really try and put value in content. I mean, I think you saw it, right? The Rising Sun and the Statue of Liberty. So that was the next piece. And the Stones put that on their socials. And then we put money behind it. We started targeting the markets.
It really seemed like that graphic you guys used for the whole tour. The New York with the Statue of Liberty. You guys localize in a lot of other markets, or was it just the national press where that was really out there?
That was just national. That was the tease, and it was just national.
So locally, you did local versions with each city incorporated?
For the tease, no. That was we just targeted ad money. But then, yes, of course, we did local. I mean, we did an announcement video. We did local creative. But often on the tours, we'll do, at least on social, we'll do a big tour announcement. And the first phase will be, we call it our announce phase, will be just to take that piece, whatever the announcement trailer is, and just geo-target it everywhere. Because in the social copy, you can say all the local information.
It seems like the tongue seems to be the only thing that really matters. As long as you have the tongue and you localize it somehow.
Yeah.
Which has got to be tricky because those are so polished and so perfect.
Yeah.
So the amount of work that goes into because it just seems so obvious and simple when you put it up. But getting the team's logos incorporated or getting the city or whatever the landmark is that you're using, it's got to be such a pain in the ass to get that right. So it's just a given. It's okay, maybe it's the Space Needle on the tongue or something, figuring that out.
It's funny. We toyed around with a lot of local tongues and we didn't quite get them right. So we're still, I think that'll be something we'll roll out as we get closer to the shows just to create hype and excitement when the bands come into town. I mean, we were sold out. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the other fun thing with the launch was we thought, well, we do have the band. They were absolutely on board to do interviews, but it's hard to get them all in a room and they're all over the world. So it was, besides getting them on the phone, it was difficult to put them all in one place or get them to do any TV or, that kind of stuff. So we started playing around with the merch and we got these great, just all fun branded again with that killer logo, but, cups, water bottles, hats. We made goodie bags and gave them to all the stations, which got us tons of play on social media. They were also psyched to get them. And then we started, well, who else can we give this stuff to? And it was we hit up a lot of different national outlets. And Fallon was a target. He loved the mug. He had all the show info and he gave us that announcement that night. I mean, he was on board.
Was that the first place that it broke? Did he have the exclusive?
No.
It felt like it the way he did it.
Yeah, well, he owned
it.
Yeah, he just owned it, right? It goes to show, just own it and you look like you've got it. We also, thought, let's take care of our radio stations on this tour. We actually, rather than at the end, inviting them to come to the show, our key jocks and some of also the key TV personalities, we actually invited them to the show before we went on sale so that they could really be invested and
morale.
And hey, we're going, you guys, go get tickets. And because that's what's most important is the jocks talking about it.
Because this crowd still listens to radio.
Yeah, totally.
That must be so nice.
And then the teams escalated. Then we were totally active in all the stadiums. Every game, I had this grid of calendar of who had home games and it was my Bible because it was such an important crowd to us. I mean, they know where the stadium is. They know how to get there. Men is a huge piece of the demo and the age group. So every stadium just became active, whether it was, the cheerleaders, buttons, everything you can think of, all the video screens turned on. So then we, in a couple of markets, really, in Seattle, you saw it too, the train wrap.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, they're larger than life. So they need, they deserve and should have larger than life marketing. And we also, as you'll see how this rollout goes, it wasn't about one big press event. It was really about targeted, fun, creative kind of stunts that could reach the mainstream through the PR, through Fallon and Ellen, football. And also we did something on Fox NFL and the pregame show that they do on Fox on Sundays. So there we covered 3 different demos quite well. Also locally with all the grassroots stuff and in the stadium. So it's all of those things together turn into be this huge launch.
You've been working with them for 5-6 years now?
Uh-huh.
I assume you're at a point where you have a pretty good idea of when you guys come up with a gimmick or an idea. You've just done so much volume with them around the world. What is in their brand that they're going to be cool with, and what's not something they're going to dig?
Yeah, we definitely can filter what we present to them for sure. But everything runs through them. We work closely with them. They have input on what's going on, and it's really a great team to work with.
How involved is Mick in that whole process? Is that like a weekly call where he's involved? Is he the mind?
We work through management, but she works closely with all of the band members.
They're all that involved?
Yeah, they all. I think each one to different levels, right? I can't really speak exactly, but they all are involved and they know what's going on. And
they did some interviews for this too, right?
Yeah.
What's the level that something has to be for you to be like, okay, this is worth taking to the Stones? Because you're clearly not taking the local community radio station. That's probably everyone, because I'm guessing you got the list of everyone in the world asking for an interview.
Oh, yeah. We don't even, it's just who we want, really. And I work very closely with the publicist to figure that out.
Can you give me an example of a couple things that made the cut?
Wall Street Journal, Rolling Stone, LA Times. Yeah, what else did we do? And then because we were going for doubles in Chicago, we also did the Chicago Tribune. I thought that would be smart,
Soldier Field?
Yeah, just to have another...
So you blew through 2 in Chicago?
Yep.
Where else did you guys do doubles?
MetLife, Jersey.
It's a big market.
Yeah.
They're not going for 3 or 4 anymore?
Nope.
Because in Europe, there were some of those markets turned into 3 and 4s, right?
Some of the UK did, yeah.
So it's just a different vision in the States?
Yeah, it's just they tour in chunks of time. I think it's 15 shows on sale now, which takes takes a couple months to do.
Right. It seems like maybe there could have been more dates in New York, though.
I think they could sell and sell and sell, but it's just a limit on what they want to do.
The concept of the size and the scope of a stadium show, just the things that you're putting in place and the bar that you're trying to set to create that excitement. Everyone says the Rolling Stones are going to sell out no matter what. But at the end of the day, it's like if you don't break it right, it doesn't work and you can't re-break it.
Nope.
So that's a ton of pressure and the amount of money that AEG is invested into those dates and the amount of faith they've got that you're going to deliver that. The stress that is involved with getting that right and making sure. And I know that you've been doing it for a while, so this is something that you know how to do, but that is just a ton of investment on your shoulders.
I have an incredible team. Derek Schaefer and Jasmine Lopez kick butt. Couldn't do it without them. The 3 of us work hand in hand between the locals and the venues and with management and just coming up with strategy. But it was like a well-oiled machine. It was amazing. Plus, we have an incredible graphics department and the whole digital team was activated, not to mention all our regionals. So it's a full-on team effort and I get to orchestrate it all and it's awesome.
It is the coolest thing in the world. And speaking of the coolest thing in the world, since we're on the Rolling Stones, can we go back 2 years and talk about Desert Trip?
Sure.
Paul Tillett puts together what really should have been the modern day Woodstock. The 6 of the coolest acts in the world. And I don't think anybody can dispute that all of them belong there. And you guys created a stadium level festival on the highest end in the middle of the desert at Coachella setup, but you guys did it differently. So it was our parents would be comfortable.
Right.
And you got the Stones and you got the Who and you got all of the most amazing acts in the world. It's amazing what you guys pulled off. It's like when Bob Dylan is the smallest act on the bill. Holy shit. It just doesn't get any cooler than that. You guys somehow managed to take all the ego out of it by not using logos, just everybody's name in the same font. And it was amazing. Like the challenge of landing that perfectly and getting them all to work together, getting them to play together was insane. But you guys getting them all to be cool with no logos and not looking like a festival poster, but looking like this very tasteful, beautiful landscape. It was amazing. Building a brand and selling it out on sale and rolling through a second. What a challenge.
It was incredible. I was so flattered when Paul asked me if I would work on it because I don't normally do festivals. So I looked at it as, oh my God, what an amazing opportunity. Incredible. Like you said, once in a lifetime lineup.
But it makes sense if you're going to do the festival with the Rolling Stones, you're going to want the person that works the closest with them in marketing.
Yeah, no, totally made sense. So yeah, it was really the same. We thought, okay, how do we get people excited about this? Always when I'm thinking in my mind, how are we doing things? It's the obvious, who are we marketing to, but it's how do we create demand? You need to create demand. You've got to get people excited about.
Such a high-end experiential, too. It was
Yeah.
done so tastefully well.
Oh my God, kudos to that whole team. I mean, it was beautiful. I mean, Vince talked a little bit about the photo exhibit. I mean, everything from that to the food, the seats, the ushers. I mean, everything was top notch.
You do Coachella, it's an open field. You roll through the same setup a week later after you break down from the 2 weeks of Coachella for Stagecoach, and you turn it into a huge amphitheater with seating because the country fans have a different setup. And then you completely change the entire setup of the field for Desert Trip, turning a field into what was a high-end stadium and setting up the VIP bars and having that level of experiential. I don't think anybody's ever envisioned doing anything like that. Certainly not on a temporary basis. Like the process of doing it, inventing it, and then not bringing it back because they didn't have the lineup that matched it yet. Clearly saving the brand until they're ready to have something that's worthy.
Just watching the build process from behind the scenes and every day how it evolved and what that turned into, I've never seen anything like it.
The idea of doing a festival for concert goers that don't do festivals, and certainly concert goers that don't go to shows 3 times in a year, let alone 3 days in a row.
We had a lot of fun with that. We got to, because we were really concerned that they were going to the fans were not going to really understand what they were coming to. So we did a whole video series on how to prepare, like what to pack, how to take the shuttle. Those were the 2 main ones. We actually went out there. We hired actors and actresses and put a whole shoot together and created all these fun pieces of content using different music from the bands and put a whole series together to prep people on how to actually do Desert Trip. And that was after we were sold out. We wanted just to make sure people really experienced it in the best way possible.
My favorite part of it was the first week everybody had their sets, but the second week everybody was worried about showing up the other bands because everybody was kind of bringing it. So they're all sweating what they were going to do in weekend 2 to make sure that they had the best sets. Like they were all competitive about how good they were and they're all trying to one-up each other. Like how cool is that?
It was amazing and it showed because they were all incredible. Every show was just as good or better. You know, you were just like, how can anything ever be better? Or people raved about every single band.
You work throughout the globe as AEG and you oversee some of the biggest tours in the world. When you're dealing with local and regional offices across the world, time changes can be hectic, languages can be a barrier. You guys have a lot of extra things to deal with when you're traveling outside the United States with a tour.
Yes.
How do you handle those challenges?
Not as much sleep. Have to really manage time right? Get up early and go work around the world. We have incredible local partners everywhere. And it's interesting. Each brings its own unique piece. I mean, South America was, I think, more challenging than most because they bring in a lot of local sponsors, lots of things to babysit and watch and, watch out for the band and make sure that everything's...
The brand protected.
Yeah. But when you go around the world with the big band, you get a lot of respect. And people really do the right thing, do a good job, want to be part of the team. So I'm lucky that way.
So people don't want to piss off the Rolling Stones.
No, they do not.
Do you have any advice for people coming up in the industry and the career longevity and how to get to that level that you get to reside at?
Good question. I think start with the basics. Learn a little bit of everything. Try to, find where your niche is. Go to shows, work shows, understand how it all works. Find good people to learn from. I still truly believe it's a learn on the job type of thing. There's lots of programs out there now, which I think are great head starts, but it's a really, learn on the job.
Do you have any industry goals that you haven't accomplished yet?
Yeah, I have been working on and I'm really committed to bringing sustainability and green into more of the tours that we do. I think we can do it, whether it's reducing plastic, making sure there's a great program called Our Cup that I'm aware of that actually gives the fans reusable cups through concessions. They rent them, they can return them at the end of the night or refill them and reuse them, take them home. They're branded by the artist. So it's a process to get things like that approved, but I would really like to elevate sustainability in touring to an even higher level. There's a great guy, ICM Partners, Mike Martin, who's a mentor of mine. I worked with him. Gosh, he's someone you should put on the podcast.
I guess you don't really think about it, but the amount of waste involved with a concert, particularly at a stadium level, with just the cups and the trash and the amount of waste that we bring in with the bottled water, just the impact that one show, whether it's a football game or a concert or whatever, just the sheer volume of 80,000 people doing anything in one space, you can probably have a huge impact on the environment by making a couple few tweaks.
Yeah. So bring it back. I was an environmental conservation major in Boulder. So,
Amy, thank you so much for taking time and talking to me.
You're welcome, Dan. It was awesome. Thanks for having me.
Amy fucking Morrison. She's the queen of concert tour marketing, and she just keeps raising the fucking bar. You try to keep up, but you can't because she's just that good.
Boom. Mic drop.
I am Barbara Hubbard from Las Cruces, New Mexico, and around the nation wherever I can produce a concert that will sell a ticket. We're in Promoter 101.
Tweets of the week.
Dan, it's the name of the podcast. We have to talk about it. We got to talk about some Promoter 101 tweets of the week. Let's start here. Never get possessive. It's not your artist or your market. It's a relationship you hope to build on, but you never own it.
Building and acting the market is a long-term partnership. You don't own it.
Everything's more impressive when you're not involved in the process.
When you know how it all works, it really takes the wow factor out of it all, doesn't it, Luke?
Pull back that curtain. You just don't want to see how the sausage gets made. My favorite one of the week, Dan. Never take the advice of a concert promoter.
True dat, motherfucker. True dat.
That'll do it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. Make sure you keep up with Dan, all of his ramblings on Twitter. He's at the Jew.
I'm at the Jew.
Hey, it's Sam Kenken, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Up next in the pod, we're joined by SMG Tulsa's Joe Giordano Jr.
So we got a great war story. Joe, what can you do for us?
You know, in my interview, I mentioned that we have a speakeasy at BOK Center, and it's become quite the hang after shows. And we've seen a lot of artists, John Oates, kind of stopped in there. We had Chris Young and his entire team toasting in there. But there's one specific EDM act, actually, that I will keep nameless right now. But they had a birthday that they were celebrating on the night of the show that we had. And it was a very cool hang. It was just a quiet night for us, hanging out with our promoter. And in comes one of the band members. Obviously, we were more than inviting and, you know, hung out with him. And all of a sudden, what we had was a frat party on our hands. And what that frat party turned into was pouring beer on each other, shirtless. It was fun. I mean, you know, we were having a great time, but the floor was getting slippery. So I figured, you know, I might excuse myself, make sure that everybody's safe for the night. And I went out to get some towels. By the time I had come back, they had left the room, and I was actually relieved. I was like, well, that could have gotten bad. Good call. I mop up the floor, but I heard in the room behind me a banging of some sort, and I was a little perplexed by this. So I opened the door, and what do I see other than they had started Fight Club in the room behind us, and they were grappling, wrestling on the floor. They had ripped their shirts off, banging on trash cans and chairs, and it was quite the birthday for said artist.
Did you get into it? Did you grapple?
You know what? Had I been training at the time, I might have, but I was a little intimidated myself.
Are you training at this time?
I am for a marathon. Yeah, no, it was terrifying at the time, but they had the best time, and that's the kind of thing that we have fun with.
Fight Club and SMG Tulsa.
Yeah.
First rule about Fight Club is tell everybody.
Yeah, that was the point.
It's always a treat to have Joe on the pod. Big fan of that guy. Bright future ahead of him. Congrats on the Polestar touring nomination for Young Up-and-Comer. Glad to see him get nominated again.
Hi, it's Kim Badir with City of Tacoma Venues and Events, appearing on Promoter 101. Glad to represent all Canadians everywhere, particularly those who have landed in the U.S. of A.
This is the tell-all that everyone has been waiting for. It's ICM Partners Rick Farrell opening up to Steiny in a very personal one-on-one.
We are at the beautiful Los Angeles offices of ICM, joined by Rick Farrell in your lovely estate.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We're up here on the 32nd floor overlooking Century City and beautiful LA.
It really is kind of changing. Like, you guys are now in what used to be the MGM building. You guys have been here for a while, but they moved out. You guys moved up like George and Wheezy.
Yep, exactly. Up to the big time. Went from 3 floors to the top 5.
The Century Plaza Hotel is being redone. And then over what used to be the mall is the Death Star that we call CAA now.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of, Century City's kind of become the mecca of the major agencies between here and Beverly Hills. Like, you guys have all kind of broadened it up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We moved here about 7 years ago and just outgrew the space downstairs when MGM cleared out. We decided to take the top 5 floors. We're actually expanding to another floor right now because we've already outgrown this space in the last 2 years.
Now, ICM over the years has gone from being the biggest, coolest metal agency that had Rush and Guns N' Roses, some of the biggest, coolest acts ever. And over time, you guys went to becoming like the AC Adult Contemporary department. And now you guys have found this equilibrium where you have some of the biggest hip hop acts in the world, some of the biggest rock acts. Alice in Chains lives here. And you guys have got a lot of those contemporary acts and some of the biggest comics in the world. It's a very well mixed balance now, on top of being a film and TV agency.
Yeah, exactly. Back when I started in 2000, there had been a regime change where a number of the agents had left with their clients, and we really had to do a restructuring. Steve Levine spearheaded that, and it was mainly adult contemporary and comedy stuff, and we just rebuilt over the years. It's incredible to see the growth here. We're up to 600 employees between the two offices in LA and New York, and when I started, it was about 300 or 350. The addition of new agents, the coming up assistants, a number of the assistants here like Mari Davies, Meg White, Brendan McGrocky, Mike Hayes, all these guys who have really built a business with some great clients, whether they be in the contemporary or the hip hop world, have really added to the whole spectrum of the entertainment here.
So you talk about these incredible young agents coming up, people like Meg who are really dominating their field, and Mike Hayes, who was your assistant, who really is having a moment. I believe he just made the 40 under 40 list.
Yes,
Billboard.
That's right.
Like with Machine Gun Kelly, just kind of like taking it to that next level. He's having some serious successes, and with a lot of those international acts as well. It's just some new life and some cool energy of the club stuff where it's like there may not be as much money there as the older contemporary acts, but it certainly breathes energy into the business, and those develop into the arena acts as we've seen with some of those other acts that we just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Like John Bellion has been a huge success story for Mike, and he's got, a whole spectrum of clients. Pete Doherty's one of the bands that he's got all of his projects, and he's actually got a visa now to come back to the United States. So it looks like there will be some activity from him and his band's coming up in the future. We've got Mari, who's signed Tiana Taylor, and Rob Gibbs, who's signed her. And these guys are all developing them from the ground up. These success stories aren't like going and grabbing an already existing successful client. It's taking these clients from the clubs all the way up to amphitheaters. So it's been a great success story with a number of these clients.
So you've got this whole passionate, youthful energy here. On the other side of the building, you've got Mitch Blackman, dollar for dollar, probably the loudest agent in the business right now. He doesn't need a telephone to call the other coast. He is just verbally that outgoing, but some of the best ears in the business.
Yeah, the guy, I love him. He's incredible, but he is a handful. I mean, the things that come out of his mouth, I just am always shocked, but he is entertaining. People love him. His clients love him, and he does a hell of a job.
They have an agency where on one side of the spectrum, you've got Steve Levine, who has some of the biggest comics and progressive acts in the world, from Chris Christopherson to Chris Rock to Jon Stewart. And then you walk to the other side, and then there's Mitch, and he's got some of the bigger acts in the world, Ty Dolla $ign kind of thing. I don't know if he's still with him or not, but stuff in that vein. But one agency that can encompass all of that simultaneously, that's a big load.
Yeah, we've really developed into quite a number of different factions here, and we all kind of support one another. So, of course, there's the various departments, and Mitch kind of straddles both between the urban, the contemporary, and the adult contemporary with clients like Layla Hathaway, who we're helping book. But then he's got new up-and-coming clients like Just Loud, who's like this incredible musical prodigy kind of a guy who's in the vein of a Prince. And, it's all different kinds of business. And he's the kind of guy who can talk, he can sign, he can deliver, and then he brings it in, and whichever part of the team he needs to help support him, he grabs onto them and makes his clients a success. Like, we've now got Joel Roman over here who's looking for TV opportunities for our clients. We've got a whole branding department. We've got all the various departments, agents who are looking for acting opportunities for clients. And, it just helps build a stronger team.
Mixing all sides and just kind of keeping it all together. Let's talk about you and not so much the agency, because we've done that. The agency's clearly on the move and good things going on. It's a long-term agency that's continued to build. You as an agent, you've been here for a while, but you started earlier on with Mike Pick's early days, right?
Yeah, I was an assistant at APA back in 96 for a couple years, and then an agent at MPI for 2 years from 98 to 2000, and started here in September of 2000. So just had 18 years here.
So coming into ICM after working for Mike Pick, pretty much you just got to assume they're like, well, if he can sell that shit, he can sell our talent because like our talent's like real.
I actually got a call from Steve Levine, and he said, we're looking for an agent, and I heard you're good, and I want to meet with you. And when we met, it was a position he was looking for as a comedy club booker. And I'd been booking this adult contemporary stuff for a couple of years, and really that's what I was doing over at APA too. So I just was straight up with him and I said, that's not really what I do, and I really want to stay booking music. And he says, well, what is it that you do? And I explained it to him, and he says, we should keep talking because there could be an opportunity anyway. And then he gave me a job, and I was here for a couple of weeks before they even figured out what my territory was going to be. And then they layered me on the West Coast, but he saw an opportunity. I was honest with him, and he asked me some questions too, like, do you know how to cut a back end deal? And at my previous agency, we were just happy to get any kind of an offer. So I wasn't really savvy on negotiating pluses versus deals, all these things. And he said, well, at least I told him, no, I didn't know how to do this. And he said, at least you're honest with me and I can teach you how to do this. But if you weren't honest with me, I would expect you to be able to do that. And when I found out you didn't, I would have been upset. So we started off on the right foot all the way around. And one thing, I will never lie to Steve. He's the man. And if you get in trouble, he'll come and help you. He's like that white knight who comes in with the brilliant idea to save the day. But if you lie to him, it just ruins the trust.
Who will you lie to if you won't lie to Steve? Some of the best agents in the country work for this agency. Andrea Johnson, who I've been a big fan long before she came to ICM. Just down the hall, your wife, who wasn't your wife, you guys met here, so you owe your marriage to ICM.
That's
China
true.
Schwan is in the building, does the sponsorship side of things.
Corporate private stuff. Yeah. It's funny. I still run into people to this day who don't know that we're married because she professionally still goes by China Chuan, and on her driver's license, it's got a hyphen with a Farrell on it.
Just one of those things would not have happened if not for ICM.
That's
so
right.
Scott Pang's down the hall. Obviously, we talked about Steve. You can go for days. There are so many talented agents at this agency. And the future of the business, I think, is, guys like Mike Hayes.
John Pleater and...
No, John Pleater is not the future of the industry. He is the current industry.
Yeah,
he's killing it right now with Alice in Chains and some of the other bands he's working with. But Meg White, you got some real things happening right now and some real exciting things. As a agent, you have a territory that you book. You oversee the West Coast. And you do a lot of the other RA's acts where you just have the relationships with the buyers, but you also represent some of your own acts where you are the responsible agent.
Yeah.
Who are your day-to-day clients?
I've been working with Brian Culbertson for about 5 years now and really watched him develop quite a bit. The Righteous Brothers has been a great one for me. For the last 2 years, I've been working with them.
And when those guys dead, how can they tour?
Well, Bill Medley revived the name after about 15 years. Bobby Hatfield did pass away, but there's a big demand out there and a lot of fans who want to hear their music. So he hired a young guy and started going back out in 2017 as the Righteous Brothers. So it's been great. Jeff Goldblum just is putting out his new debut album this week, and he's been doing some touring. He played Arroyo Seco last year. And
The Fly, Jeff Goldblum?
Yes. Mr.
You booked
Jurassic
The Fly?
Park. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. He's a brilliant jazz piano player. He covers jazz, sometimes standards, and he uses guest singers like Haley Reinhart and sometimes various other female vocalists to augment the show. But he just played the LA Phil 100th anniversary celebration, and we got a festival announcement coming up pretty soon for him too.
So the diversity between Jeff Goldblum and Brian Culbertson, they probably actually would fit together pretty well based on what you just said.
And Vicki Lawrence is one of my clients, my longest standing client. I've been representing her for a dozen years, and she's got a new hit TV show on Fox called Cool Kids that's making her less available but raising her profile, and we're starting to get better money for her in the open time frames.
So when an act becomes more famous, you want more money for them?
Well, the availability goes down, the awareness goes up. So yeah, that's
a simple supply and demand.
Yeah.
I always wondered how come you guys decide to charge more for acts as time goes on. I also noticed sometimes you guys charge more for acts even if nothing has changed. They're getting older, we're charging more. Deal with it.
And gas costs more, flights cost more, so we'll raise the price. That does happen. So it's good to have a client where the profile is raising at the same time the price is.
It's amazing how gas goes up $5,000 every 2 years. It's amazing. You familiar with this math?
Jet fuel.
Okay, sure. I mean, yeah, that could be a jet. Anyway, we could banter like this all day long, but let's talk about your view on the industry. It seems like it's the most healthy economy that we've seen for touring business for the last 30 years.
It is. I remember 8 years ago, I would go to all these conferences and all the presenters would be singing the blues about, all I can do is spend up to 15 grand or 25 grand. I've got a limited budget now because of the state of the economy. And now they're just buy. And they're reaching higher with ticket prices and guarantees than they ever have. So it's come back strong. And I see the Live Nation stock price going up and up, and the volume of dates that are playing out there are just incredible. Like, everybody's touring. And at a certain point, it's starting to become too much. Some of the smaller acts are not having the success that the bigger acts are, just because there are too many tours on the road.
Do you have advice for some of the younger kids coming up in the industry?
Just gig. Try to get whatever opportunities you can. Even if you're working with an agent and a manager, don't stop what you're doing. Don't stop putting the time into the social media, into self-promotion, into, developing your craft, because just because you sign with an agency doesn't mean you've necessarily made it. It's time to double down, and everybody really pulls to create a success.
Okay, and what about some of the younger kids in the industry that are trying to get off an assistant's desk and become an agent, or try to get into being an assistant? Like, how do you work your way into being a real agency?
There's a lot of turnover when it comes to the assistants, so there are always positions opening up. And I think that you need to make sure that you're submitting your resume to HR departments at every agency, because eventually something will pop. It may not be immediate, but stay in touch with them, check in once a month. I know that for a while, when I hired my last assistant, I had trouble putting together 3 interviews before I could make a decision on somebody. Thankfully, I found a really good candidate, but there was a shortage at the time I was looking about 6 months ago. We actually hired a person in our HR department now to recruit and reach out to colleges and things like that. So we have a bigger pool of candidates to interview.
Yeah, it seems like it's a challenge, the new generation, like coming out with no experience but wanting a ton of money just because they have a college degree but no actual understanding of the industry whatsoever.
It was like when I started, I think I was making $350 a week as an assistant. And when I got my first agent gig, I remember I was only getting paid $500 a week because they knew what I was getting paid as an assistant. So I was definitely not making it on my own. I was still having to ask my parents for help paying for my insurance and things like that. So it eventually came. Like, my dad told me, do what you love and the money will come. And eventually I was able to grow. But if I had to rely strictly on my salary at the time, I would not have been able to live on my own. I had my own place, my own apartment. I would have had to have 2 or 3 roommates in order to live like I did back then.
You started a small agency, you work your way up to a bigger agency, work your way up to more responsibility and more skills and more talent. And over time, somehow you grow the best mustache in the industry. Yeah, you thought I was going to let you off the hook and not talk about we're talking about the fucking mustache. Now, your mustache is industry renowned.
It helped when someone started a Facebook fan page for it a few years back, and now it's got about 200 followers for Ricky Farrell's mustache on Facebook. And I actually joke around with some artists or managers who submit their artists to me, and they have really low social media numbers, and I say, my mustache has more followers than your band, so you need to do some work. But when I started losing the hair, I used to have long sideburns. When I started losing my hair, I couldn't keep the sideburns, and I had to figure out something else to do. So I just thought, let's give this a shot. I started growing out the beard, trimmed it back, and saw the mustache had come in really well since I was a teenager. So I decided to go with it.
So does the carpets match the drapes?
You're a sicko.
I was thinking we should edit that, but you know what? Let's leave it in. That's kind of awesome. Anyway, we go back a long, long way, and I can't think of a better person that signifies the meaning of the industry. You're detail-oriented all the way through. You never miss things. I never get the phone call from you going, oh, I forgot to tell you they aren't carrying backline. I need that too. The deal's done. It's announced. Sorry. You're not that guy. And if it happens that something changes, you'll fight to keep the deal the same. It's like, oh, you're not bringing it? You were supposed to. I guess we'll have to work that being backed out or something. You always find a fair solution when something changes. The dignity with which how you cut the deal is always thinking down the road of, if I were on the other side, would I be pissed if this happened? So when we discuss a deal or something happens, and things happen, you do enough volume, things happen all the time. There's constantly cancellations or reroutings or this went to the other guy or the politics of this. But whenever something comes out, the discussion is always fair. And if there is something that doesn't seem fair, and if I can make a good argument, you'll go fight for me, which I like. I appreciate it. I feel like some agents are like, this is just the way it is. It's too late. And in other cases, when I'm having the conversation with you, I'm like, no, this isn't the way it should be. This is like, hear me out. And then you'll go fight for me. And sometimes it goes back the other way because you actually were listening and you care.
I believe in the spirit of the deal. And if your offer said you're providing ground transportation and I forgot to put it on the contract for some reason, then I reach out to you and say this was part of the deal, you would do the absolute same thing. You'd say, of course, that was part of the deal. I'm not trying to put one by you. I know you operate the same way, but I just feel like ultimately I do work for the client, but at the same time, I'm here to establish a business with buyers on behalf of a lot of clients. And I don't want a client or a manager, one client or manager, to cause me to have a problem with the relationship that's going to make it difficult for me to book the other 150 clients I have to book. So ultimately, I feel like my relationship with the buyer is the most important thing for me to focus on. And then I have to take care of the needs of the artist as well. So it's really a balancing game. And sometimes there are things that come up where I have to do something I don't want to do. But at the same time, that's in the best interest of the client. And that's what I have to do. And I think that it's received in the spirit that it ultimately is part of the way things are in the business.
Some of my favorite quotes ever come from you. I hold you up there with Terry Rhodes with some of the better quotes. And one of them, I think I want to say we were at Polestar maybe, you were on a panel and you balancing greed.
I said, I'm a mediator between greed and reality. And it's true, both sides have their greed and both sides have the reality. And somewhere in the middle is the right deal. And sometimes the artist isn't willing to take the right deal. But as long as we as agents present the artists with the opportunities and the best possible deals that we can bring forward, then we're doing our job. But, it's tough when an artist has Polestar numbers that show that they're worth 20 grand and they want 40. There's somewhere in the middle where the good deal is to be made and some of the artists don't want to take it. So, I'm hoping that I can navigate through that and cut a deal that makes everybody happy and makes sense.
It seems like it wouldn't be fair for us to drop the Terry Rhodes thing and not give some of our favorites. My favorite Terry Rhodes quote ever was, "Nobody washes a rental car."
Yeah.
What's your favorite? Because we both hold him in the highest esteem. He's one of our favorite mentors.
I love him. And he, one time I brought him a deal and it was like, I don't really know this promoter and they threw way too much money at the act and I'm not sure this is even going to work. What do you think we should do? He goes, "Rick, that's like a cow pissing on a flat rock." And I looked at him funny. He goes, "Do you know what I mean?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Have you ever seen a cow piss on a flat rock?" "No." "Well, it's a mess."
My favorite one is one we can't share, but he is definitely a personality and just love like the inspiration that he puts on the industry. But I know we both look up to like just the way he looks at the world, calls it like he sees it.
Oh, yeah. He is the ultimate pragmatist. And he was here as the head of our New York office when I started. And for a long time, I think I've worked with him for about 15 years. Definitely one of my mentors and one of my idols in this business.
The great Terry Rhodes. And speaking of the great Rick Farrell, thank you so much for taking time and being on Promoter 101 with me today.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming to me, Danny.
Best mustache in the biz, hands down. Gotta love Rick Farrell. And you can meet Rick Farrell at APAP live in his person if you visit the ICM booth, always in the third floor top corner. Come by, say hi to Rick Farrell, and tell him Steiny sent you.
Make your plans for APAP January 4th through the 7th. We'll see you there.
John Valentino with AEG Presents, and here we are on Promoter 101.
It's a time to shine a spotlight on people whose folks knocked boots some 9 months ago, and however many years ago. That's right, time for some birthdays of the week this December 21st to the 27th, 2018.
Brian Enoch, Kevin Daly, Tim McDuffie, and of course, W. Luke Pierce. Yeah!
Holy shit, yeah. 31 this year, Dan. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. Saturday, wishing a happy birthday to Works Entertainment's own Darren Courtney and A.B. Corbin.
Well, call your mother. That's what you should do first. And thank her for knocking boots with your pops.
Joe Pierce's birthday on March 25th, 1987. Probably sounds right.
Sunday, the 23rd, Raji Bear down in Austin, Texas.
On the 24th, wishing a happy birthday to Triple Eights, Bruce Kalmick, Nick Gold, and the best dressed man in London from Simbla Presents, Mr. Ali Rosenblatt.
Simbla. It's like, I was going to name my something cool, and I started, and it was like Sin, and I was like, nah, never mind, blah.
You know what that is, actually? That's actually, you take the RO and the TT off of his name, and that's what that is.
The 25th is Christmas, and we've got some happy birthdays on Christmas Day themselves. Phil Potter, Jamie Kittman, and the best session drummer and live now, Josh Freese, who you've probably seen out with Sting right now.
Wait a minute, Josh Freese is out with Sting right now?
He has been, yeah.
That's excellent news.
Yeah, you got to love a guy that's so diverse. He can play with Devo, the Vandals. It wasn't the Proclaimers. Who was the other one? It was was it Pretenders?
He was the Pretenders, yeah.
Yeah, so he's just jumping all over the place. I love it when he plays with the Vandals. That's my favorite. And I believe he used to be Electric Boy at Disneyland when he was a kid.
Get out of here. Is that true?
Yeah, that's what they said in the Vandals documentary, so you got to love that.
One of the most accomplished drummers out there, from Nine Inch Nails to Weezer and Sublime with Rome, Paramore. That guy's been out with everybody. Happy birthday to him. Wednesday, 26th, wishing a happy birthday to Michelle Grant.
27th, Jason Feldman in Portland, Oregon, and Las Vegas' own AEG's Bobby Reynolds.
The man in Vegas and South. Happy birthday to Bobby, and happy birthday to everybody else from the gang at Promoter 101.
Hi, it's Kira Finkenberg. I'm the marketing and ticketing guru for Andy Hewitt and Bill Silva Presents. I'm on Promoter 101.
Quote of the week comes to us from Bruno Mars. Along the way, you pick up some fans and a handful of haters. Ain't that the truth, Luke?
Have we picked up fans or haters, Dan? I think we picked up both. It's time to say goodbye. Thank you, everybody, tuning in episode 114 of Promoter 101. Have to give a huge shout out to Amy Morrison from Concerts West, Rick Farrell from ICM Partners, Joe Giordano, all the guests and everybody tuning into this podcast. Really hoping you have a wonderful holiday weekend, safe travels to wherever you may be going. And we'll see you back here next week.
It's funny, the way I wrote that, I didn't. It's probably predates you, but it's the Mickey Mouse theme song at the end. Now it's time to say goodbye to all our company. Anyway, thought you would have appreciated that, but I know you probably just saw it for the first time.
I glossed past it, and I didn't get the cadence for it, but, I appreciate it.
Made Connor smile on this end, so I can tell you that much.
You're trying to get me to sing the Mickey Mouse song right now?
I was trying to, but, hey.
Is that what's happening? You're asking me to do that, which I don't want to do?
No. I think I've done it. I think we just leave that whole piece in, actually, because it's kind of fucking funny.
I think that's great. I think that's a great sound.
So it backfired, and I did it myself, so fuck me. Anyway. Until then, you can email us at Steiny at promoter101.net. That's Steiny at promoter101.net. We check that and tell us what you think. No problem.
Next week, episode 115 of the podcast, we're back with Brooklyn Bulls' Kirk Peterson talking about working side by side with the man behind the curtain, the great Peter Shapiro, a guest in this podcast earlier this year as well, too. Kirk, one of the finer minds, booking some talent across all of the Brooklyn Bull properties.
And the almost famous Toby Mamis chats with us about Alice Cooper, Happy Days, and so many more things.
The man from Alive Enterprises. And maybe a war story, or maybe it's a love story with Lucky Man's Tom LaPena sitting down to talk about a great moment in his life.
Until then, we're wishing you sold-out shows for weeks to come. Don't forget to call your mother.
Merry Christmas.
Feliz Nave fuck yourselves.
Feliz Nave fucking dog.
This is Sam Hunt from Paradigm. You're on Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba.